We remarks for the Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, I believe that Connecticut, and I think most of us would believe, that Connecticut is a great state. And it really still is a great state. We're uniquely situated between New York and Boston, and we know that New York and Boston are still thriving areas, thriving so much that they took GE. We have a beautiful environment. It's still great as you go around our state to see its natural beauty. I love looking at Long Island Sound every day. Our educational system is one of the best in the country, if not the best. And our children benefit from that investment in education. We have a highly skilled workforce. Lockheed Martin recently purchased Sikorsky aircraft and mentioned the quality of our workforce. And they are one of the industries that still remain here because of their creativity and ingenuity to be able to figure out ways that despite the costs of business going up, they can figure out how to re-engineer their plant to make it more cost efficient to stay. So we do have some decent industries here in the cradle of aviation, Connecticut, the home of the aircraft, obviously the invention of the helicopter, and we still make the best jet engines too. We also have a high-tech manufacturing industry going well. So when you have so many good things happening, why is it, whether it's anecdote or fact, when we go out to the street and talk with our neighbors and our businesses and the people that live here in Connecticut, why are they feeling such misery? Why aren't things better than they are? Since I came here 6 years ago, we have found tax increases of historic measure, followed by deficits and budget adjustments, what the Hartford Courant calls an addiction to spending. And quite frankly, that's what we need to do to our state, is to put it in rehab, to get our state to start living within its means, so that we have a financial grounding that's sound, that's sustainable and predictable. One of the communities I represent has been doing that for 20 years, the city of Shelton. And yes, guess what? Their grand list continues to grow. They create jobs in this Connecticut environment, demonstrating that it can be done. But how is it done? It's done with budgets that jobs can rely on, so that people that are creating these jobs understand what their future is, that they're not going to get hit with another historic tax increase, that the budget and the growth of government is sustainable, it's predictable, it's limited. And by doing that, we put more people to work, which then enables government to do more. But in Connecticut, we're not doing that. And we're not putting the state in rehab with this budget, because what this budget does is business as usual. We're looking at one-time revenue budget gimmicks, tricks, if you will, tax increases guised as revenue enhancements, and no real long-term structural change. That's what we need. Instead, we have a state littered with broken promises. Broken promises to school children for transportation funding. Broken promises to mental health and behavioral substance abuse issues. Broken promises to aging in place. This budget looks at cutting reductions for tax relief for elderly renters. Renters. Reduction in funding for nursing homes. Eliminates a 1% provider cost of living increase. A 1%. 1% in Connecticut. You're not even keeping up. And 1% reduction in the Connecticut home care program coming off a closure of Category 1 last year. So we're looking at an area, aging in place, that can actually help people, because when you talk with individuals, nobody wants to go to a nursing home. Everyone wants to stay at home. It's better for them and less expensive, and we're making it more difficult to do, and we wonder why our budget is always busted when Medicaid is one of the largest line items in the budget, and we're not looking at efficiencies to save money and to be good to the people that want to stay home. This is why we continue to have the problems we have year after year after year. And now we have a governor and his majority that are calling this a new economic reality and trying to blame it on Wall Street as if it was somehow beyond their own responsibility. If it was beyond their responsibility, then why isn't this happening in New York and New Jersey and in other places, as Senator France said, like Rhode Island? Because it's not a new economic reality that's general in scope. It's a new economic reality for the state of Connecticut, brought on by the leadership of the state of Connecticut. And this new economic reality starts with a belief that our government's purpose is finite and that we must accept cuts to government services and our way of life. At its heart is a belief and acceptance that we are in this permanent fiscal crisis and that good-paying middle-class job loss is acceptable, that it's acceptable. How un-American is that? That we're never going to be better than we were yesterday. It's a reality grounded in failure. We now focus our attention on raising minimum wage and giving more benefits to people in service industry jobs, rather than focusing on jobs that can actually pay a mortgage, educate our children, and run a household. The new economic reality is growing these low-paying jobs and is why we're losing income tax revenue. Because the good-paying jobs are being forced out of state. And as a result, we can't afford the government to help the people, the seniors, and those that need our help the most. Isn't that what we're here for? To make sure we keep our core services of government and help those that are in need of them? The new economic reality looks at hospitals as banks, not healthcare centers and good regional employers. The majority has taxed hospitals hundreds of millions of dollars. And as a result, we have less access, reduced quality, and higher cost. And isn't that everything that was supposed to actually occur under the Affordable Care Act? Weren't we supposed to increase access, improve quality, and yes, make it affordable? So all the noble causes of the Affordable Care Act are not happening here in Connecticut. And it's all based on this new economic reality that looks at hospitals as banks. 6 years ago, I got involved for the reason, or one of the reasons, was because I have young children. And I wanted to make sure that our Connecticut was going to be here the way that I remembered it, that it had a strong economy, There was a job for whoever wanted one. And if you wanted a better job, you just had to go down the street to find it. I remember when I had a conversation with the union members at BIC. They remembered that day. If you didn't like what was going on in your workforce, work environment, you didn't have to take it. You could go somewhere else. But today, you're lucky if you have a job. And in many instances, have to work longer and harder to keep it. Our party, the Republican Party, in the wake of all these issues that confront the state of Connecticut, have put forward alternative plans and budgets that have been able to keep the social safety net, yet still invest in our children's education, our transportation infrastructure, and our towns, and not do it with new taxes. We have demonstrated time and time again that there is a better way, a hopeful way, one that is optimistic and hopeful for our future, instead of what we see year in, year out, and often in between as we deal with budgets that just don't work and don't work for the people of Connecticut. One of the things I see in my town is that a couple years ago we were promised, or actually last year we were promised, that if you had high car taxes, you'd get a tax break. I think it was called historic tax reform, was what it was billed as. I have two communities, the town of Seymour and the town of Stratford. Both aren't going to qualify for that historic tax relief that was promised to them. Instead, communities like Simsbury and Woodbridge are going to get tax cuts. And now let's size these two communities up against the other two. The town of Stratford has a median income of $66,000. The per capita income is $34,000. And we have 7.4% of our population in poverty. No tax break for you. Woodbridge, on the other hand, they have a median household income of $134,000. $134,000. Almost double the household income of families in Stratford. The per capita income, $61,000. The state's average is $38,000, almost double that. And the persons living in poverty, $2.7. So the wealthy get tax breaks, and the middle class goes without. Is that fair? I get that it could be political, but the question is whether it's fair. I don't think people in Connecticut will argue anytime if it's fair, but when it's not, that's why they're not happy in the streets of our state, because they recognize that many of the policies that we are promoting, and I shouldn't use we, the majority promotes, are not fair to the good, hard-working families of Connecticut. So 6 years ago, I got involved because I wanted to make a change and make the future better for our youth and our children. And this budget just doesn't get us there. If the youth were listening, and besides sounding like the teacher on Peanuts where we just go wah, 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 wah as we talk about policy here, I think the children, if they really understood what we're doing with this budget and what it means to them, and whether or not that good education that they get in the classrooms of the state of Connecticut could actually find a job here, they wouldn't be so happy. Because I know my kids want to stay in Connecticut, but what we're doing is we're educating our children for the other 49 states, because that's where the jobs are. And when you see time and time again, whether it's fact or anecdote, that jobs are going to New York and Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and that we're even seeing, Hartford poaching baseball teams from New Britain. If that's the new economic reality, I want no part of it. Because that's not the message we need to send to the children, which are our future. We need to send a message that they can use their education, they can stay here, they can raise a family here, and that it's good to be here. But this budget doesn't get us there. And unfortunately, the children are the ones that are going to suffer because of it. We've shown time, as I said, and time again, the better way. We've demonstrated the leadership that's necessary to get our state back on track, to create the good-paying jobs that's necessary. We've put that blueprint out there, and it doesn't mean that good services and core services for people in need get cut. We can do better than the hopelessness of the new economic reality. But it starts with an understanding that government has a measure of blame for that new economic reality. Connecticut can be a better state and will be a better state once we have long-term structural reform, a government that lives within its means, and has a sustainable and predictable financial grounding. This budget doesn't do that. This budget doesn't get us there. This budget doesn't put Connecticut poised for an optimistic future, and is why I can't support it. Our children and our future deserve better than this. This just doesn't get us there. Plain and simple. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, sir.